So I am now joined by a very special guest, Samantha Pell. Samantha covers the Capitals as a beat reporter for the Washington Post. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
So I wanted to start with your career briefly, and then we can kind of go back and talk Caps. So I was reading that your career, it's taken you all across the country and a lot of stops along the way. Looking back, does being in the position you are now, being like a trusted Twitter follow and a trusted news source for the Capitals, does that kind of make it all worth it?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I think at the end of the day, I really love what I do. I think, when we're not in a pandemic situation, I just really found a lot of joy just going to the rink every day, being able to kind of talk to the guys and realize that we're getting paid basically to watch hockey games and talk to hockey players. And I think what's really cool about sports and, newspaper reporting is that, we always kind of thought sports is the one thing that's very consistent in everyone's lives. And it's kind of an escape from the crazy world. So to kind of always be able to report about sports and kind of give people info there and kind of the happiness is what I kind of really love. So yeah, I think definitely at the end of the day, I love working at the Post, and it's fun, being able to talk back and forth with people on Twitter, but that's really not what we do it for.
Speaking of Twitter, you're a fantastic Twitter follow, obviously, for all things Caps. But one of my favorite things on Twitter is when it comes to news and breaking news that you guys cover. So I'm really curious, when news like that comes down, what does that process look like on your end? Is it ever a really frantic process trying to get it out or confirm it, or what does it what happens when breaking news happens?
Yeah, for sure. I think it depends on the situation. If it's something that maybe has been lingering, like a free agency thing where you maybe hear some names and you try to reach out to sources and you can kind of build it up and there's a process to it. So you can feel kind of comfortable. You can get stuff prepped. That's why some stories, when they come out super fast, it's probably because people already knew it's going to happen in the first, in the beginning. They just couldn't really confirm it in time before a team does. A lot of the time, it's just going to be a team announcement, like a Brenden Dillon situation. I think everyone knew that he was going to re-sign with the Capitals. We just didn't know when and for what number. So a lot of those stories are probably always prepped. You just kind of plug it in and go, and you tweet, and you're good to go. But yeah, definitely some crazy things. Like a Michael Kempney, for example, him getting hurt, getting surgery for a torn Achilles, and having to be out 6 to 8 months. Nobody had anything really prepped on that, so that's kind of a frantic, go and do that. But yeah, I think it's all dependent on the situation, but definitely more the rumors and the rumblings is when you try to, reach out to sources, and a lot of texting and calling.
What's the biggest news story you've covered during your time at the Post?
That's a good question. I was gonna say the coronavirus pandemic, but that's pretty obvious. Honestly, I think just newsy I can think of with the Capitals is honestly probably Ovechkin's 700 goal and kind of that road there, because it started off with a season of, okay, we know he's going to hit it, and you kind of plan the entire season around, okay, well now he's 20 away, 17 away, 13 away. And you kind of keep on going. So it's actually a really long, drawn out process, at least from our end, of making sure that we have everything prepped and prepared. We have timing right. We have stories right. We have who's going to write when, how are we going to cover this? Who do we want to talk to beforehand? How are we going to handle it when it happens? Do we want extra graphics? Do we want different things on social? So that was probably the biggest thing that we have done this year, just in terms of news stories. But I can't really think of a major news thing. Maybe the Capitals were thinking about playing in Russia in the next couple years. I remember that was pretty early on this season. So had a lot of talks, with the Capitals owner and the NHL and trying to break that. And eventually the two sides, it just didn't work out with the timing. But yeah, I would say kind of those two things are the biggest.
Absolutely. And you touched on one of the bigger ones this week. Obviously, this week has been crazy for Capitals news, but Brenden Dillon's new 4-year contract was done this week. I'm conflicted on Dillon. His numbers, if you go back and look at them, they weren't great, but then you see him as an awesome clubhouse guy and get into fights. That the Pittsburgh Penguins fight just comes to mind right off the top. What do you think went into the decision to bring Dillon back for 4 years, and what do you think the organization really likes about him?
Yeah, I think from the very beginning, once he was acquired at the trade deadline, they wanted to bring him back. I'm pretty sure he wanted to be a Washington Capital for a long time as well. A 4-year deal is a pretty long deal. McClellan's done a lot of these 4-year deals in the past. You think of, Carl Hagelin, Richard Panik, Nick Jensen, all 4-year deals. So that seems to kind of be the number here. But yeah, no, I think Dillon is obviously, it's a small sample size. I think obviously he was kind of bumped around between the top pairing with John Carlson and then with Orlov on the second pairing. I think now with Kempney out, it was just even more of a, okay, we need to sign this guy situation for the Capitals, and he should be on the top pairing with John Carlson next season. And then maybe they get more consistency from that standpoint. But yeah, I mean, kind of like you said, he's just a great human overall. He was really, really great in San Jose with the Sharks and what they did. And then now coming here, I think you could tell pretty early on that he's just a good guy, fits in really well with the group. Obviously, he's just a guy's guy. The Capitals always talk about wanting to sign players that are going to fit in, that are just upfront, honest. We'll take one for the team situation. So yeah, I think I like the signing. I think I like it even more for the price and the fact that Kempny's going to be out for a while. It just really helps them.
You made a good point. As soon as Dillon came over, it felt like he clicked right away. And it felt like one of those guys that was like a ride or die, get into fights, like having everybody's back. Do you think that when the Capitals looked at his stats this season, do you think that they were thinking, okay, well, maybe this is an anomaly and he's more of like a consistent, like they went back and looked at his career to see what kind of player he was?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, yeah, again, it's a weird season, shortened. He didn't really have a lot of time to be with the guys. But overall, just looking at physicality, body type, that's exactly what the Capitals usually go for. They want a really big body defender. They want a physical guy. That's why they kind of brought in Gudas. Doesn't really seem like he's going to be panning out in Washington, but just overall with him pairing next to Carlson, it allows John to kind of open up more offensively. So I think the Capitals just saw the whole package with him. Now, can he translate that for the next 4 years? I think we're going to see. Obviously, he's kind of on the older side with, the rest of this Capitals group. So we'll see how things go. But I think for right now, it's a building blue line.
Absolutely. So there's a couple of other big name free agents this year from the Capitals. If you had to put money on it, who do you think is the most likely to come back?
I don't think any of their UFAs will come back. So the UFAs are Kovalchuk, Gudas, and Holtby. I didn't think all of them are gone. I just think they don't really have the money for Gudas. I think Kovalchuk kind of did his 1 year in Washington, and it seems like he's going to be going back to Montreal. And Braden Holtby, I mean, it's just such a big cap hit. The Capitals made that very, very clear. They've talked basically the entire season since they extended Nicholas Backstrom in January that, they're going to have to get really creative with the cap. It's going to be really difficult, using different phrases like that. So I think we can kind of see this one coming. I think tomorrow is probably the time when you're going to see that goodbye from Holtby.
Are you preparing for just like the mass outpouring of, it's going to be a really sad day on Twitter when they decide to not bring him back? He's been obviously a tremendous part of the organization. So you think he's just as good as gone, talking about Holtby?
Yeah, I just think from what we've heard from what General Manager Brian McClellan has said about, even the rumors with Henrik Lundqvist, saying we're in the market for a veteran backup goaltender. Obviously, Holtby's going to test out free agency, and I just really think they're going to kind of wish him the best there. But I think they would have gotten a deal done like they did with Brenden Dillon if they were really, really interested. But it seems like they've turned the reins over to Ilya Samsonov, and they're going to kind of let him ride it out. And so they just can't have Braden Holtby as a backup in that situation.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So you brought up the Henrik Lundqvist. A lot of these names. I've seen a ton of Hank to DC chatter. He's 38 years old. Like, what do you think? Would he be brought here more as just like a mentor for Ilya Samsonov and just like an occasional like guy who can plug in there and play a couple games?
Yeah, I actually really think they need a goaltender behind Samsonov that can probably play like 30 games. Obviously, Samsonov did really, really well his rookie season. Came kind of, I think, as a surprise to maybe some people outside of the organization of just how well he was doing behind Braden. But yeah, I think overall, just as a mentor, he'd be really great to Ilya. Obviously, has had his runs against the Capitals in the postseason, knows them very well. So it'd be kind of weird, I think, for a lot of Capitals fans to see him in a Capitals sweater. But just overall for Samsonov, I think it'd be great to kind of have Lundqvist behind him as kind of that insurance policy for him to kind of learn. Obviously, Lundqvist was the face of the franchise in, with the Rangers, but he is kind of older. His numbers are, on decline. He wasn't that guy for them this past year. So if the number's right, and I think they are, I really do think that he is coming to DC.
Now, if for some reason it's not Hank, do you foresee a different veteran goaltender? Or what about Phoenix Copley? I've never heard anybody bring that guy's name up. I know he's still in the organization, but I feel like everybody just kind of forgets that he's there.
Yeah, I think there was a little bit of chatter in the bubble of, okay, with Samsonov out, is it going to be a Copley or Vitek Vanacek situation? And I think the fact that the Capitals chose Vitek Vanacek to back up Holtby in that situation is very, very telling for the way the organization kind of feels about that. So I think, yes, while Felix Copley and Vitek Vanacek are in the organization, and maybe they could have done a very, very cheap goaltending tandem next season, I really believe that they wanted a veteran, tested, experienced guy, and they're willing to spend more money for that situation at least next year.
So one of the other like huge Caps news stories that came out was the firing of Todd Reirden and the hiring of Peter Laviolette. Like, what do you think has been the general consensus among Caps fans? I mean, you obviously have a good finger on the pulse of what Caps fans are thinking based off of social media. But what do you think the general consensus with Laviolette is?
Yeah, I think a lot of a lot of people were just like not Mike Babcock, to be quite honest. So I think when they said Peter Laviolette, it was okay, well that name is not Mike Babcock. That's not a huge controversial name. That's not a blow it up, cause some chaos situation. And I think honestly, that's probably the number one thing that Caps fans were saying on Twitter that day. I think once you sit back and think about it, this guy's very experienced. He knows how to run his teams. He knows how to run them well. He knows how to get the most out of his teams in a short amount of time, which I think is crucial. I mean, if they wanted to do a long term with him, I think maybe more fans would be a little bit iffy. But, just seeing what he did in Nashville with, a Philip Forsberg and Roman Josi and those guys, I think he'd be really, really good in Washington. And it is, kind of one of those shorter deals. The Capitals window is closing. So we'll see what he can do in the first couple years. But I think it just makes sense overall for the Caps.
You brought up the windows closing, and that kind of plays to the Laviolette signing. It's crazy going back. What's the statistic? It's like they had never hired a head coach that had previous head coaching experience. What was?
Yeah, it was. They never hired a head coach that had won a Stanley Cup before being hired, which is kind of crazy. But also in the Alex Ovechkin era, he's never had a coach besides Barry Trotz that wasn't a rookie head coach.
That's
so
what
this is only his second, basically, coach with any experience. And for Barry, I mean, he only had one other team, but he was there for numerous years. So yeah, I think it was about time that Ovechkin kind of got that experienced veteran guy, and we're going to kind of see how those personalities mesh. Obviously, there's a lot of big personalities in that Capitals room, so I think it'll be super interesting to see how Laviolette manages those and vice versa, how they're going to see him in the room. But yeah, I think overall it'll be super interesting, and I know he's already talked to players and coaches and all that, so we'll see how things go.
You brought up, Laviolette's style. And I've always heard that he's got a kind of like a little more of a disciplinarian approach to head coaching. And that kind of wears thin after like 2 to 3 years. Do you think that like perfectly aligns with this 2 to 3 year window that everybody says the Caps have?
Yeah, I think it kind of does. I mean, he's obviously going to make his point known when he has a point. He's not afraid to shy away from that. He's going to make sure to push guys' buttons to get the best out of them. I think he's never really had a player like Alex Ovechkin, a superstar caliber player. So I think it's going to be super interesting to see how he handles him. If he's not playing well, like, do you bench an Alex Ovechkin? Like, I don't know. But I just think for him, yeah, overall his coaching style, obviously he's done great things with the blue line. You just look at Nashville. I mean, a Roman Josi, Philip Forsberg, all these different guys. So I think in Washington, maybe they'll try to do the same. I think it'll be super interesting how he works with the John Carlson. And again, he has to hire his entire assistant coaching staff. So he kind of has the ability to hire who he wants or kind of keep who the Capitals have on staff. So we'll see how it kind of plays out once the season actually starts, which we don't know yet exactly when that will be. But yeah, overall, I just think definitely disciplinarian. It might be a little harsh right now. I know he was like that really early on in his younger years as a head coach, but definitely knows when to put his foot down.
Yeah, absolutely. So Alex Ovechkin, I read that he turned down the organization's extension attempt recently. I think he wanted like $12 million a year, and they counter with several million less. Is this cause for concern? Is this something that more people should be talking about?
Yeah, we never confirmed any reports on an extension being offered or denied, or if that 12 million is that number. Honestly, that seems really high for an offer or that he wants. I think he knows that the organization is in a really tight cap situation, and if they want to go out and win another championship, they really can't have that. They need to go out and be able to get pieces, and I think his current AAV of around 10 million is probably more likely to where he should be and where the two sides would probably want to come out. Obviously, I could be very wrong, and that could change. But yeah, no, overall, I mean, Alex Ovechkin wants to finish his time as a Capital. He said it when Nick Backstrom re-signed his extension. Like, he wants to be here. So unless something drastic changes and he decides to go off to Russia and not come back, I don't think there's cause for any concern.
So you're saying you put the panic button away, maybe put it on the other side of the room. We're not at that point yet.
Yeah, definitely. I would say erase everything about an extension and just focus on when the NHL season's going to start.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that's the big thing we need to be looking at here. The Caps 2020 draft this week, they had their 5 selections. The names of these Caps like draftees were fantastic. If we were to do a draft of these Capitals players that they drafted just based off of their names alone, who would be your number 1 pick?
You know, I feel like it's a tough race between Hendricks Lapierre, which I think is a fantastic name, and Bear Hughes. Obviously, Bear Hughes, there's a lot of Hughes already in the NHL, you know, you think of Quinn and Jack, but that's just a quintessential hockey name. I think Hendricks Lapierre is just like another one of those quintessential hockey names, kind of like rolls off your tongue. So yeah, I think probably those guys are at the top, but yeah, a lot of really fun names. I think overall in the draft, I think there were some really cool guys from over in Europe to a couple teams as well.
Yeah, I mean, did I see on Twitter you're like trying to figure out how to spell Hendricks at one point? It was an X or?
Yeah, I was always second guessing if I was going to spell Hendricks or Hendrick because of all the Lundqvist kind of rumors. And so I would always type it out when I was talking about Lapierre, and I was like, okay, his is Hendricks, it's not Hendrick, or Lundqvist is Hendrick and not Hendricks. But luckily, there's probably going to be no confusion there since Lapierre is not going to, you know, see kind of the big leagues for a bit now.
I'm just envisioning the Bear Hughes when he goes to the Hershey Bears. The marketing opportunities there are endless, I think.
Oh, it's amazing. I'm thinking like teddy bear toss, like every night having some different promotion or some different, like whoever's calling games out there. I know John Walton said he was super excited to call Bear Hughes' first goal.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, some of those radio and broadcast calls are probably going to be awesome in Hershey.
Are you gearing up for the hashtag, like, you know, like bear down, or, you know, are you running through these things when you're trying to, you know, when it comes up to the NHL?
You know, I think I'll have to get my notebook ready. I'll have to like think some out now, and then like 3 or 4 years when he actually gets here, I'll have to like break it out from like a cabinet or something. But yeah, no, he seems like an awesome kid. Obviously, you know, he's an Idaho native. I think only a few NHL players have ever even come from Idaho. So it's a pretty cool opportunity for him. And I know he's kind of a late bloomer into the WHL. So kid has a really good story. I think people are going to really like him. But yeah, definitely that's down the line.
Yeah, put that in the tickler file. Bear down.
Yeah.
You know, you never know when you might need that. But real quick, Hendricks Lapierre, the first round pick. I saw, first of all, he's an Ovi fan, so he's already got my vote of confidence. But he's got a little bit of an injury history, right?
Yeah, he does. So it's a little complicated. But it was reported that he had, I think it was up to 3 concussions since last February. And when we were and then a couple other neck injuries. But then when we were chatting with him, he said he actually only had 1 concussion that happened in February 2019. And then the rest of it was kind of a slew of neck injuries, which I'm assuming kind of, you know, goes hand in hand with a concussion off the bat there. But he's fully healthy now. He says he's fully ready to go. He's already playing in his junior season. I think he's already had 5 points in 2 games. So it doesn't seem to be affecting him that much, but it obviously kind of did affect the draft. He kind of slipped, you know, there to the Capitals and at pick number 22, and they had to trade up to get him. But yeah, I mean, overall, the Capitals feel like his medical history is okay. Again, this kid is not going to be playing next year for the Capitals, so it's not a drastic, can he do this right now? But yeah, they felt like overall everything looks good and should be good for the future.
I love it. All right, we're going to do a couple quick rapid fire questions, then I'll let you go. So I've had Rob Carlin on here before, and I've asked him the same question, and he didn't really know the answer. So I'm hoping that you'll know when there's a hat trick, and you know, and all the fans throw their hats onto the rink. Do you know what happens to those hats?
For a hat trick, I'm pretty sure they pick them all up in plastic bags, but I'm not sure what happens after that. But I'm pretty sure when Jacob Vrana had his first career hat trick at Capital One Arena this past year, I'd heard this story, from Peter Bondra, who said that he actually went into the Capitals room after and like placed his own hat in Jacob Vrana's locker. And he already had hats in there. So I'm pretty sure they like take a couple out and actually like give them to the player if they want it. But I'm not sure where like all the rest go. So
Right.
That's a good question.
Yeah, you know, it's something. Every time I see that happen and they scoop them up with those like shovels, I'm always like, all right, that's cool. Do you get them back, or you know, it just feels like a waste of a hat?
Donated. It must be they donate it to one of the Capitals like organizations. I'm not sure. But I know I know the fans never get their hat back, but that's about it.
This is the story that nobody's talking about, and we need the hard-hitting journalistic, stuff to come out about this. What happens to those hats? Okay.
Good question.
All right. What is the best Capitals uniform combination in your opinion, and why is it the red, white, and blue alternates?
I do actually really love the red, white, and blue
Thirds.
alternates, but I also like the Screaming Eagle one. I just think it's classic. I know some people don't really like it, but I definitely like it.
Yeah, I want to start a petition, and I'm hoping I'll have your support to have the thirds just be the regular home jersey.
But people think it's like jinx. People think it's bad luck.
They think the thirds are?
Yeah.
Oh no, I wasn't privy to that. All right, might have to adjust that.
So I don't know, but maybe you can like change it into like, they were bad luck, but now if they actually start wearing them a lot, then they'll be good luck. But
right, I'm gonna get on that change.org petition by the way.
There you go.
How cool is Tom Wilson?
Very cool. Very, very chill. For people that say that he's a bad human because of what he does on the ice, they're just completely wrong. He's one of the nicest, kindest, most respectful people I've met just overall. Couldn't be farther from what people I think say to him online and on Twitter, but definitely really, really great to work with. Answers your questions completely, will never shy away from anything, and will always go out of his way to say hi. And
he's got the cutest dog on Instagram.
That's true. A lot of Capitals have really great dogs, right? Like Alex has Blake, and Nick Jensen, Nick Dowd obviously have their dogs. TJ Oshie, God, they have a lot of dogs, but Hallie is very cute.
So who is the better podcaster in your opinion, Garnet Hathaway or Nick Dowd?
Oh God. I think they're both pretty good. I think honestly, Nick Dowd surprised me about how well he is at podcasting, and same with Garnet, just because I think being friends, you just kind of work off each other back and forth, but some of their little like snips back and forth, I think are pretty hilarious. So yeah, I like it. I like both of them.
We need more of those Between the Two Blue Lines podcasts. Like, they come out like 3 times a year, and they leave me wanting more.
They had a great one in the bubble. I think that was awesome. But yeah, I think they should do more. You should petition that one too. Put that another petition.
Right. So I got thirds. I got more Between the Two Blue Lines. Out of the other 3 DC sports teams, do you have a second favorite, or how does that kind of rank with you? Because you're a DC person now.
Yeah. Honestly, I don't think I have a other favorite. I think with the Capitals, I mean, it's just I watch them literally every day. Like that is my life. So I have to. And honestly, I don't really watch any of the other ones. I would say maybe the Nats is the second one, just because it's baseball, and who doesn't like to go out to a baseball game and eat a hot dog? But yeah, probably the Nats.
That's a solid choice. All right, last question. What is the best piece of advice you have ever received?
To stop apologizing. I think that's the best advice I've ever gotten, is if you're confident and certain in something, you don't need to apologize for doing something in the first place. A lot of times it happens in journalism. If you're, trying to break something, or you're really confident in something, and maybe someone gets a little bit upset, you shouldn't be sorry that you're doing your job. So that's probably just overall, and then also in life, just stop apologizing. You're probably right. Stop saying sorry a lot.
I like that a lot. Yeah, I always like to end with that question, and I'm going to, might internalize that as well. Samantha, this has been a ton of fun. Where can people check you out? Your Washington Post. Where can people follow you on Twitter?
Yeah, on Twitter, I'm Samantha J. Pell. Basically, everything is on there. I'm never really away from my phone, so tweet a lot, retweet. Obviously, read my stuff on WashingtonPost.com. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
I love it. This is a ton of fun. This is going to come out next week, and I really appreciate your time tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. This has been fun.